Her name was Hannah Carter, the woman her entire family had just declared missing. The strange part was that Hannah was very much alive. She wasn't missing at all. At that very moment, she was sitting alone in a hotel room overlooking Charleston Harbor, less than 30 minutes away from home. Yet somewhere else, her mother was signing paperwork stating that no one had been able to reach Hannah. It all began on the morning after Evelyn's funeral. A heavy gray sky hung over Charleston. The air inside the old family home felt thick with silence and avoiding glances. Hannah noticed it the moment she walked into the living room. Her mother, Diane Carter, kept whispering to Aunt Melissa. Her younger brother, Ryan Carter, barely looked her in the eye even once. At first, Hannah assumed it was grief. After all, Evelyn had just passed away. But the feeling of unease clung to her like a shadow. 3 days later, as she was preparing to return to Atlanta and continue her work as a financial compliance investigator, Hannah received a call from her bank. The employee on the line confirmed that a beneficiary update request had recently been submitted. Hannah frowned. She had never submitted any such request. The employee immediately apologized, assuming she was already aware of the filing. Only a few minutes later, an email was mistakenly forwarded to Hannah's inbox. She opened the attachment. The moment she read the first line, the blood seemed to drain from her body. The primary heir is currently unreachable. Temporary administrative authority will be transferred to immediate family members until further notice. The name of the primary heir was Hannah Carter. The names receiving temporary authority were Diane Carter and Ryan Carter. For a few terrifying seconds, the room became completely silent. Hannah read the document again, then a third time. With each reading, the cold sensation in her chest grew stronger. She wasn't missing. She hadn't left the country. Her phone was working. Her email was working. Her bank accounts were active. And yet someone had officially reported that she had vanished. Hannah immediately called her mother. Diane didn't answer. She called Ryan. Ryan rejected the call after the first ring. 10 minutes later, a text message appeared. "Don't worry. The attorneys are handling everything. We'll explain later." There was no explanation. No apology. Not even a single question asking where Hannah was. For the first time in years, Hannah felt like she wasn't a daughter in that family. She felt more like an obstacle that needed to be removed. As darkness settled beyond the hotel window, Hannah began reviewing every document her grandmother had ever shared with her. The more she read, the more irregularities she found. Evelyn's estate was far larger than anyone had ever admitted. Rental properties, long-term investment portfolios, coastal land that had appreciated dramatically over the years. This was no ordinary inheritance. It was the kind of wealth that could completely change someone's life. And suddenly, everything started to make sense. The secret meetings, the avoiding glances, the unanswered phone calls. They weren't grieving the loss of a loved one. They were busy dividing the prize. Hannah sat quietly by the window. Memories began flooding her mind. The times she paid off Ryan's debts. The times she sent money to save her mother's house from foreclosure. The times she canceled her own plans to solve another family crisis. For years, Hannah had always been called the strong one, the dependable one, the person who showed up whenever everything fell apart. Now she finally understood. Those were never compliments. They were the tools used to turn her into everyone's lifeline, everyone except herself. Hannah placed her phone on the table. Her eyes settled on the final line of the document. Temporary authority becomes effective immediately. At that moment, all doubt disappeared. This wasn't an administrative error. It wasn't a misunderstanding. And it wasn't the result of grief. It was a plan. A plan that had been prepared long before Evelyn's funeral. And for the first time in her life, Hannah realized her family wasn't afraid of losing her. They were only afraid of losing access to what belonged to her. The next morning, Hannah didn't return to Atlanta. She pulled open the hotel curtains, placed her laptop on the table, and began doing what she did best: investigating. If her family wanted to turn her into a missing person, then Hannah was going to find out exactly what they were trying to hide. After years of working in financial compliance, she had learned one simple lesson: money doesn't lie. People do. But money always leaves a trail. Within just a few hours of reviewing public records, Hannah spotted the first cracks. Unusual mortgages, recently issued loans, assets that had once belonged to Evelyn being used as collateral. Every road led back to the same name: Ryan Carter. Hannah sat silently in front of the screen. A familiar feeling crept into her chest. It wasn't surprise. It was disappointment. Because this wasn't the first time Ryan had dragged the entire family down with him. She clearly remembered when Ryan was 20 years old. He dropped out of college after accumulating a large debt from a failed investment. Their mother cried for days. In the end, Hannah was the one who paid everything off. 2 years later, Ryan opened a business with a group of friends. Within a few months, the business collapsed. Once again, Hannah stepped in to clean up the mess. She sold the first car she had ever bought with her own savings to help her brother avoid a lawsuit. No one thanked her. No one ever mentioned it again. Everyone simply treated it as Hannah's responsibility. Because she was always the strong one. The successful one. The one who could fix anything. Back then, she believed it was family love. Now, looking back, it felt much more like exploitation. That afternoon, Hannah received a call from an unfamiliar number. The man on the other end introduced himself as Thomas Reed. He had been Evelyn's personal attorney for nearly 20 years. His voice was deep and tired. "I've been waiting for your call." Hannah remained silent for a few seconds. "Why did you know I would call?" "Because your grandmother expected this to happen." The answer left Hannah speechless. Thomas asked to meet in person. An hour later, they sat across from each other in a small cafe overlooking the harbor. The elderly attorney placed a yellow envelope on the table in front of her. He explained that Evelyn had left it behind in case anything unusual happened after her death. Hannah's hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside was a small voice recorder. She pressed play. Her grandmother's voice filled the room. Slow, warm, and filled with concern. "If you're listening to this recording, there's a good chance someone is trying to keep you from receiving what belongs to you." A lump formed in Hannah's throat. It had been months since she had heard that voice. Evelyn continued. She loved everyone in the family, but she no longer trusted everyone in the family, especially when money became involved. Hannah lowered her head. For the first time, tears rolled down her face. Not because of the inheritance, but because Evelyn was the only person in the family who had truly seen her. Not as a wallet. Not as the person who fixed everyone's problems. Not as the strong daughter who was expected to sacrifice everything. Just as Hannah, Thomas slowly pushed another folder toward her. Bank statements, loan agreements, mortgage documents. And then Hannah saw the final truth. Her mother and Ryan had been borrowing money in secret for years. The debt had grown so large that without Evelyn's inheritance, they would lose almost everything. That was why they had rushed to remove Hannah from the process. Not because they hated her, because they needed money. Desperately. Desperately enough to erase their own daughter's name from the inheritance. Outside the window, the sun slowly began to set. Hannah watched the last rays of light reflecting across the water. Inside her, the final pieces of innocence disappeared. For years, she had searched for reasons to forgive. Reasons to justify their behavior. Reasons to believe that somehow her family still loved her. But now every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. They hadn't betrayed her in a single day. They had been doing it for years. The difference was that today, for the first time, Hannah could finally see the entire truth. And for the first time in her life, she decided she was not going to save them anymore. 3 days later, the official estate distribution meeting was held. The law office stood in the heart of downtown Charleston. It was a quiet morning. The sky was clear. Everything looked perfectly normal. Except that inside a conference room on the 6th floor, the Carter family was preparing to sign documents that could change their lives forever. Ryan arrived early. Diane did too. Aunt Melissa sat in the corner, constantly checking her phone. On the table rested a thick file containing the entirety of Evelyn's estate. No one mentioned Hannah, as if she had never existed. The legal representative began the meeting with the usual formalities. He confirmed one final time that the primary heir was unable to attend. Diane immediately nodded. "We've tried to contact her many times," Ryan quickly added. She disappeared after the funeral. The room filled with the heavy atmosphere of manufactured concern. Everyone knew they were playing a role. The only thing they didn't know was that the performance was about to end. When the final documents were placed on the table, the attorney asked everyone to sign. Ryan picked up the pen first. His hand trembled slightly. Not from guilt. From excitement. After years of debt and failure, he believed his life was finally about to change. Then it happened. The conference room door opened. The sound of the hinges made every head turn at once. Ryan froze. Diane jumped to her feet. The pen slipped from Aunt Melissa's hand. Hannah Carter was standing in the doorway, calm, composed, and nothing like a missing person. The air in the room seemed to freeze. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Diane was the first to recover. "Hannah. I can explain." Hannah looked at her mother. There was no anger left in her eyes. That frightened Diane more than any outburst ever could. Because when someone is no longer angry, it often means they have run out of hope. Hannah walked to the table. She placed a file on the surface, one thicker than all the documents already sitting there. "I have a few things I'd like to explain too." Her voice was calm, but every word cut like a blade. Copies of emails, phone records, bank documents, loan agreements. One piece of evidence after another appeared before the room. With every page that was turned, Ryan's face grew a little paler. Diane began losing control. Aunt Melissa avoided eye contact entirely. Then Hannah placed the recorder on the table. She pressed play. Evelyn's voice echoed through the room. "If you're hearing this recording, it means someone is trying to take something that doesn't belong to them." No one said another word. The silence felt endless. It was the moment every mask fell away at once. The senior attorney slowly removed his glasses. Then he looked directly at Diane. "I believe this meeting should be suspended pending an investigation." Ryan shot to his feet. "No, that's not what happened." But his explanation came too late. Truth has a unique quality. It doesn't need to shout. It only needs to appear. An hour later, the entire transfer process was frozen. The loan records were forwarded to the appropriate authorities. The false statements were placed under review. A formal investigation began. There were no handcuffs. No dramatic scenes from a movie. Only consequences. Quiet, slow, and impossible to reverse. 3 months later, Hannah stood outside the coastal home Evelyn had loved most. The sun was setting on the horizon. The wind carried the familiar scent of salt water. The estate had been protected. Part of the inheritance had been used to establish a scholarship fund in her grandmother's name. The rest was invested exactly the way Evelyn had hoped. The phone in Hannah's pocket vibrated. A text message from Ryan. She looked at the screen for a few seconds, then quietly deleted it. No reply. No bitterness. No further revenge. Because some victories are not about making someone else suffer. They are about finally refusing to let them control your life. Hannah lifted her gaze toward the ocean, now glowing gold beneath the setting sun. For years, she had believed family was the safest place in the world. Then she learned a painful truth. Family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by the people who choose to protect you when they have every opportunity to hurt you. And sometimes, the most expensive lesson life can teach is learning how to walk away without looking back. If you were in Hannah's position, would you forgive your family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories about truth, justice, and powerful life lessons, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story.